It always begins the same way. She doesn't look at you as you are, but as who you might become. There's something in her gaze that feels magnetic, charged. Not quite affection, not exactly hunger, but a calculation. You mistake it for recognition, but what you're feeling is assessment, measurement, a silent, meticulous scanning of potential. She sees not the man in front of her, but a blank canvas on which she can paint her private masterpiece. And the cruel truth is that the masterpiece was never you. It was never meant to be you. Carl Jung warned us, not with the pleasant packaging of self-help gurus, but with the chilling clarity of a man who spent a lifetime diving into the deepest waters of the human psyche. Jung's life was dedicated to charting the territory we call the unconscious, that vast, silent chamber beneath the surface of our awareness. And in those depths, he unearthed something profoundly unsettling about the way women love. He discovered that they often do not fall for a man, but for the fantasy of a man. Not the flesh and bone reality standing before them, but the illusion their mind has conjured. And most terrifying of all, they don't even realize they're doing it. You may believe you're being chosen. You may even believe you're being loved. But what's truly happening is far more elusive. You're being selected to fill a role, drafted into a script that was written long before you ever entered the room. A psychological puppet, cast to perform in a private, inner drama. And the moment you no longer fit the character, she replaces the actor, not the story. Jung had a name for this phenomenon. He called it the animus, the inner masculine image that resides within every woman's unconscious. When this animus is unrefined, immature, or unchecked, it doesn't serve her, it possesses her. It becomes the invisible puppeteer, shaping her desires, twisting her affections, fueling her arguments, and justifying her cold withdrawals. She doesn't see you. She sees what her animus demands of you. She's no longer choosing with consciousness. She's being pulled by shadow. Men fall for it because we are not taught to see it. We confuse being desired with being known. We think that being chosen means we're understood. And when she looks into your eyes and says, "You're different," you believe her. But you're not different. You're just the latest audition for a role she's rehearsed since childhood. And when the mask starts to crumble, when the fantasy begins to rot under the weight of your real humanity, you're left reeling, hurt, betrayed, and humiliated. But you did nothing wrong. You simply stopped performing. You became a man instead of a myth. And myths are never allowed to have flaws. Jung warned that the only exit from this theater of illusions is through a process he called individuation, the lifelong and often brutal journey of becoming whole within yourself. The tragedy? Most men never even begin that journey. We are conditioned to seek approval, to chase love, to derive our worth from how women respond to us. We are trained to abandon ourselves for applause. As long as you keep chasing validation, you will remain a character in someone else's play, destined to be rewritten, recast, and replaced every time the fantasy changes. Individuation isn't sexy. It isn't rewarded. It won't earn you likes or followers. It demands that you face the soft underbelly of your own soul, the cowardice, the weakness, the wounds you thought you buried. It demands that you stop blaming women for not seeing you and start seeing yourself. Because here's what Jung knew, and what most men never dare to understand. You don't become a man by being chosen. You become a man by choosing yourself. Your value isn't created in her eyes. It's forged in the furnace of your own solitude. When a man has walked the dark corridors of his unconscious, he cannot be seduced by projection. He no longer plays to the crowd. He becomes the author of his own reality. Jung believed the greatest tragedy of modern masculinity is not rejection, but self-betrayal. Men bending themselves like wire, contorting their identity to please women who don't even know what they truly want. We call it compromise, We call it love. But what it often is, Jung would say, is the death of the soul. A man who abandons his own psychic growth to meet the demands of the feminine projection becomes its slave. You stop being a man, you start being a mask. You smile, nod, agree, perform, until you forget who you were before the mask was ever placed on your face. And women? They sense this more than you can possibly imagine. That neediness, that willingness to reshape yourself for love, it repels her. The very thing you think will make her love you, your obedience, your predictability, your emotional availability, becomes the reason she loses interest. Why? Because the feminine isn't drawn to safety. It's drawn to mystery, to challenge, to depth. The moment you reveal everything, the moment you abandon your boundaries and become fully exposed without spine or center, you vanish. You cease to exist as a man in her eyes. You become invisible, replaceable. And here lies the terrible paradox. Most men fear solitude more than they fear self-deception. They'd rather perform than risk being alone. They'd rather be needed than be real. But Jung taught that no man can be free until he has faced and embraced solitude. Individuation demands you die before you die, that you burn away every false layer, every pretense, every illusion you've constructed to be loved. Only then can something authentic begin to emerge. But that journey is a lonely one, painfully lonely. As you walk further down that path, you begin to see things others can't. You notice the games people play, the scripts they rehearse, the masks they cling to. And when you try to speak the truth, they turn on you. They mock you, label you as cold, arrogant, too serious. They tell you you're the problem, but you're not. You're the mirror. And people hate the mirror when it shows them what they're not ready to face. Jung knew this. He spent decades studying people terrified of their own shadow, the dark, suppressed parts of themselves they were too afraid to acknowledge. Women, Jung warned, are often raised in cultures that reward avoidance of the shadow. They're told they are already complete, pure, intuitive, loving, without ever needing to confront the unconscious masculine within. But Jung refused to indulge this fantasy. He wrote that the greatest danger to women was the unexamined animus, the voice that speaks with false certainty, false righteousness, false moral authority. When a woman doesn't confront her own animus, she becomes dominated by it, projecting it onto every man she meets, punishing them for the internal war she refuses to face. And here you are, believing you're the exception, believing you can be the savior, the one who finally earns her love by being patient enough, strong enough, devoted enough. You tell yourself that if you just love her harder, perform better, wait longer, she will finally see you. She will finally choose you. But that's not how projection works. Jung was brutally honest about this. Projection is not a simple misunderstanding. It's a psychological theft. It steals reality and replaces it with illusion. And unless both men and women awaken from that illusion, they are doomed to repeat the same silent tragedy over and over again. Two shadows dancing, each blaming the other, neither willing to turn inward and confront the source of the distortion. That's why the very woman who once saw you as her hero can just as easily come to see you as her enemy. Not because you changed, but because you failed to uphold the fantasy she projected onto you. And the cruelest part? She doesn't even know she's doing it. She doesn't realize that she's punishing you not for who you are, but for not being the myth she never told you you were hired to play. Jung called this collapse of illusion inevitable when people refuse to take responsibility for their own inner world. You didn't betray her. You didn't deceive her. You simply disappointed the character in her mind, the one you were never meant to be, the one no real man could ever fully embody. He once said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. And nowhere is that more true than in romantic love. Most people don't fall in love with each other. They fall in love with a projection, with a hope, with a fantasy scripted in childhood and reinforced by every love song, every story, every disappointment since. And you? You walk into it hypnotized, believing this time will be different, that this time she really sees you. But if you've never faced your own unconscious patterns, then you are merely playing the same role in a slightly different play. You are not being chosen. You are being summoned by a fantasy you had no hand in writing. You want to blame her. You want to call her manipulative, cold, inconsistent. But Jung wouldn't let you off that easily. He would stare you in the eye and ask, "Why did you let yourself be chosen by her in the first place?" The truth is hard. The man who refuses to face his own inner feminine, the neglected emotions, the wounded child, the desire to be cared for, is destined to be enslaved by the animus projection of the women he attracts. You are not a victim. You are a volunteer. You chose the role. You put on the costume. Because playing a part was easier than standing alone in the raw discomfort of your own incompleteness. This is the moment most men stop listening. This is the edge of the cliff where comfort ends and responsibility begins. Jung didn't offer quick fixes or gimmicks. He offered a brutal mirror. He handed you the lifelong work of self-confrontation, of sitting alone with your thoughts until the lies you tell yourself begin to crack, until the voice inside you that says, "I'm nothing without her," begins to die. And that voice will not go quietly. It will scream. It will beg. It will threaten you with loneliness and shame. It will whisper that no man can live without being desired, that no one will love you if you don't perform. But Jung's work whispers something far more dangerous. It whispers that the man who can stand without needing to be desired, without needing to be chosen, without needing to be affirmed, is finally free. Free from illusion, free from emotional slavery, free from the toxic dance of performance and rejection. And here's the paradox. When you finally reach that place, when you stop chasing, stop performing, stop needing, something remarkable begins to happen. Women notice, not because you need them, but because you don't. Not because you seek their approval, but because you embody your own. And when they do approach, it's no longer as goddesses seeking worship, but as human beings seeking truth. They can feel the difference, even if they don't know how to name it. You are no longer swayed, no longer molded, no longer seduced by the story in their eyes. And here's what you'll notice. People get uncomfortable, even angry. The weight of your presence begins to disturb the room, not because you are loud, but because you are unmoved. You no longer fit into the safe categories society uses to keep men compliant. You are not charming. You are not needy. You are not desperate. You are sovereign. Jung warned that the individuated man, the man who has walked into the depths of his own unconscious and emerged whole, is not celebrated by society. He is feared, labeled as distant, aloof, arrogant. But the truth is more threatening than that. The truth is that he can no longer be controlled. The very people who once begged for your attention now resent your independence. The women who once found you intoxicating now accuse you of being emotionally unavailable. But what they truly mean is, I can't control you anymore. You've stopped reading from their script. You've stepped off the stage. And when there's no longer a script, when the performance ends, most people don't know how to relate, because they were never relating to you, only to the character you played. Jung once said that the gods have become diseases. What ancient people called divine possession, we now call neurosis. And make no mistake, men who live for feminine approval are the most spiritually sick of all. You think you're being romantic when you say, "She's my everything," or I'd do anything for her. But Jung would shake his head. What you call love is often just cowardice, a refusal to carry your own soul, a desperate attempt to place the weight of your being onto a woman's shoulders, hoping she'll carry it for you. But no woman, no matter how loving, was built to carry the soul of a man. That weight will break her. And one day, it does. She drops it. She has to. And when she does, you feel betrayed. But you should feel grateful, because that moment, the collapse of illusion, is the birth of truth. That's when you realize the path to becoming a man was never hers to walk. It was always yours. And in that raw silence, when the applause has faded, when the script is gone, when the mask has melted, you will stand alone, staring into the mirror of your own soul, and you'll face a choice. Blame her, grow bitter, join the chorus of angry men who write off all women as shallow, deceptive, or manipulative. Or you do what Jung would demand of you. You turn inward, you walk through the fire, you begin the terrifying, liberating, relentless work of individuation. You stop seeking someone to complete you and start building the man who no longer needs to be completed. Because here's the brutal truth. The woman you're searching for out there is the reflection of a part of yourself you've abandoned. Until you reclaim that part, every love will be a lie, every connection a transaction, every relationship another costume party. But when you face it, when you do the internal integration, you become something else entirely. You become a man who no longer performs for affection. You stop chasing women. You stop molding yourself into something digestible. You stand still. You become rooted, grounded, alive in your own skin. And something miraculous begins to happen. You stop attracting women who want a character. You start attracting women who want the truth. And you'll know the difference when it happens. She won't shower you with dramatic declarations or try to bind you with flattery. She won't treat you like the missing piece of her puzzle. She won't seduce you with the promise of completion, because she isn't looking to be completed. She's done the work. She's met her own shadow. She's confronted her animus. She's burned through her own illusions. And that is why she won't need you to perform. She'll stand in front of you, whole in herself, unafraid of your wholeness, not as a goddess demanding worship, but as a human being finally ready to meet another human being, with no costumes, no projections, no games. And in that moment, something rare happens. There is no desperation, no clinging, no pressure to impress or become. There is only truth. And that truth, Jung taught, is the rarest and most dangerous kind of love. The kind that is not born of lack, not born of fantasy, but born of freedom. Freedom to choose, freedom to walk away, freedom to stand beside each other, not to fix each other, not to rescue or reform, but to witness, to walk, to grow, side by side. But this is not the kind of love most people will ever know, because most people quit before they get there. They settle for performance, for fantasy, for the thrill of temporary admiration, even if it means sacrificing who they really are. Why? Because facing who you truly are still feels unbearable. The silence is too loud, the pain too sharp, the emptiness too wide, and so you rush back into the arms of illusion. You slip the mask back on and step back into the play. And for a moment, you feel wanted again, needed, chosen. But deep down, the hollowness remains. Because until you've chosen yourself, truly, completely, you are just a character, a role, a projection waiting to be replaced. But if you have the courage, the brutal, gut-wrenching courage to stay with the discomfort, to keep walking through the fog, to let every false layer fall away, something extraordinary happens. You reach the edge, not of madness, but of revelation. You find yourself. And when you find yourself, when you become rooted in who you are, not as an identity, not as a performance, but as a presence. Women stop being the mirror you use to feel like a man. They stop being the source of your worth. They stop being the judges, the prizes, the proof that you are enough. They become something else entirely. Partners, not prizes. Mirrors, not mothers. Allies, not saviors. And you love them not because you need them, but because you choose to. From a place of clarity, from a place of strength, from a place that no longer needs permission to exist. You love without grasping. You stay without clinging. You give without needing something in return, because you are not trying to be enough anymore. You are enough. And that is the most terrifying kind of man for the world to deal with, because he cannot be bought, he cannot be broken, and he cannot be cast. Jung didn't leave behind a step-by-step guide. He left behind a warning that if you do not confront yourself, you will be enslaved by everyone else's fantasy of who you should be, especially the fantasy of women. But he also left a challenge, a call to arms, to walk the path of individuation, to stop blaming women for the roles you eagerly accepted, to stop looking for wholeness in someone else's eyes, to stop waiting to be chosen. Because the man who chooses himself, fully, unapologetically, relentlessly, is the man who cannot be controlled. He cannot be seduced by illusion. He cannot be pulled back into the dance of performance and approval. He writes his own script, and when he stands in that truth, the world will try to put him back in the box. They'll call him arrogant, distant, unreachable. But he will not be shaken, because he has done the work. He has stood in the fire. He has buried the boy who begged for love and resurrected the man who no longer asks permission to exist. And if you've made it this far, if something inside you aches with recognition, if something burns with the painful truth of everything you've denied, don't turn away. Don't let this become another insight you forget by morning. This is not a message meant to be consumed. It's a message meant to ignite. Take it seriously, because there are men out there, millions of them, still trapped in the illusion, still playing the part, still waiting for the fantasy to finally love them back. They don't need more lies. They need truth. They need mirrors. They need someone who has walked the path far enough to look back and say, "I've been where you are, and there is more." And if you become that man, not perfect, not polished, but whole, you will begin to notice the difference in every room you walk into. People will feel it, even if they can't name it. The quiet confidence, the unapologetic presence, the freedom from needing their validation, the refusal to perform. You won't have to explain it. They'll know. And yes, it will make some people uncomfortable. They won't know how to handle a man who doesn't chase, doesn't beg, doesn't mold himself to fit their comfort. They'll try to shrink you back down, to label you, to shame you. Let them. Because when you no longer fear their rejection, you have already won. You've already stepped into a life that no longer requires applause to have value. And that is where real love begins. Love that is chosen, not because of need, not because of loneliness, but because you can finally look someone in the eye without asking them to complete you. You'll see her when she arrives, the one who has done the work. She won't be dazzled by your performance. She won't ask you to shrink. She won't try to make you her savior. She'll meet you as you are, without projection, without illusion, without need. And when that happens, you'll recognize the silence, not the silence of emptiness, but the silence of peace, of presence, of knowing that you are no longer acting. You are no longer chasing. You are no longer bleeding out pieces of yourself for love. You are whole. And from that place, love is no longer a transaction. It becomes a communion, a sacred space where truth can breathe, where freedom can grow, where neither of you is trying to fix the other, because both of you have already faced the one thing most people never dare to confront: yourselves. That is Jung's final gift, not a promise of easy happiness, but the sacred invitation to become a man who no longer waits to be seen. A man who sees himself. And once you do, everything changes.